If you've ever wondered if your child should be seeing a professional for counseling, you're going to want to hear what our next guest has to say. He's also going to tell you how to find a good one.
Yeah, Dr. John Duffy is a clinical psychologist, best-selling author, and national speaker on relationships, parenting, teenagers, and families. He wrote this book. I love it. It's a phenomenal guide for parents. It is called The Available Parent. One person I remember, whenever I introduce your book, I always think about the person in our staff who said the invisible parent.
Yeah.
It's like
very different concept.
Yeah.
It's the available parent, not the invisible.
Good to see you.
Yeah, really
good to see you guys.
I think this is a question for a lot of parents because they know that teenagers are going to act out, they're going to have behavior issues, and so sometimes it's hard to know, is it just typical teenage stuff or is it something where you need to see a professional?
Right, and it's a tricky question for parents to answer because a lot of things seem like, well, this is just normal adolescent stuff. But I always tell parents, trust your instincts. If you see this big difference emotionally, socially, academically, if you see your kid withdrawn suddenly, then there's, to my thinking, no downside to go and talking to a professional and at least ruling out the idea that there's something terribly wrong and giving your kids some tools to work with if they are experiencing some difficulty.
So who's your typical patient, you know, age and maybe what they're dealing with in their life?
Yeah, it ranges actually quite a bit. So I'll work with middle school age kids, high school age kids, college age kids. Adolescence is broad.
Yeah.
And the presenting problems are anxiety, stress, depression, social issues, issues within the family. They run a gamut. But I'd say if there was a theme, it would be anxiety and stress. I see that more than anything else.
It's fascinating that the people so young are feeling so much anxiety and stress. What's giving our young people anxiety these days?
Well, you know, you talk about things like social media. A lot of things feel so pressing and immediate to them. And I think they just cannot kind of ever get an opportunity to regroup. I always figure even if they put their phone down or their iPad down, there's still this buzz of energy like I'm missing something. I have to get to it. So there's this immediacy and this urgency that we didn't grow up with that our kids do. And it's really hard to get yourself in that mindset of, wow, yeah, this really is very, very stressful and difficult. And academic stress and social stress has amped up a lot over the last generation as well. Yeah.
So when does it kind of go over that normal level? What's normal and can be expected? Because I even remember when we first started talking about some of these topics on the show, I minimized the issues, thinking like, oh, we all deal with that stuff, you know, kind of buck up attitude.
Yep.
You know, and I think it's easy for us to look at our childhood or our school and think, well, yeah, sure, some of that went on, but it wasn't that bad. It's a different day and age, and that's something that I've learned very clearly here from people like you and others on the show. So how do you know when it goes beyond normal and it needs specific attention?
Yeah, you know, my bias is, first of all, I think almost every kid could use therapy at some points just because I think adolescence is a very difficult, tricky time. But the metric that we use in my profession is, does it interfere with your child's level of functioning? In other words, is he or she getting out in the world? Is he or she engaging in school? Instead of taking anything that is diagnostic into consideration, sometimes I'll sit across from a child and just think to myself, is this kid on her game or off her game? And if she's off her game, I figure I'm glad she's here and she's seeking the help she needs.
That's a great barometer.
Yeah, and I wondered too, are kids pretty open with you? Does it take a few sessions, and what kinds of things do they say? I've always wondered what they say to a therapist, a psychologist behind closed doors that they're maybe not saying at home that we need to hear.
It's unbelievable how open kids are. Once they feel like they're talking to somebody they can trust and respect, who's non-judgmental, kids have a story they want to tell, and they are eager to tell it.
And eager to be heard.
Eager to be heard.
Right?
And they'll tell you things that you would be surprised, right? About some of their worst behavior, some of their biggest fears, some of their biggest social insecurities, how much they loathe themselves. A lot of kids today really loathe themselves, and they want to tell that story. And so it's a privilege to be party to that, but you have to be open to hearing it. You can't just want to talk them out of feeling the way they feel.
That's key. I think as parents, we don't want them to feel that way.
Yeah.
We don't want them to feel bad or anxious or depressed. So
Yes.
that's so true. I mean, it's true for me when they express a problem. It's like, well, don't feel that way.
Right. It's our best of parental intentions, right? Like, oh no, you're beautiful, you're awesome, you're smart, anybody who doesn't love you is a fool.
Yeah.
But effectively that's telling our kids, yeah, I can't really take your pain, so you're going to have to take that somewhere else.
Yeah.
And you really want to be the person they come to.
So maybe is part of the key for a parent, because I feel like you said, if you kind of play into that, like, oh, tell me more, or whatever, you almost feel like you're enabling those feelings on a, I don't know how to come up with a better way to describe it, but like you said, you almost want to, divert them, change the subject, change
Right.
the way of thinking, give
Right.
them something positive. So is that where a therapist is truly the key, because you can delve into those without enabling those feelings?
Great question. So, and I think parents can do this too, but as therapists, what we tend to do is acknowledge and validate. In other words, give a child enough birth to tell their story in the most honest way, and then move forward. And so that it's not like we're never going to move forward and move past this, but first they need to know that they're heard and understood, and that's where as parents sometimes, because we're anxious, we tend to cut them off.
Yeah.
For sure. I feel like it's difficult to find a good therapist. I don't know if you hear that from a lot of people, because, hey, if I'm going to trust you with my kids' secrets, I want you to be good. And I think it's true in any profession. For every one really great therapist, there's probably a lot that aren't so great. Maybe that's not something you're willing to say, but maybe you can help guide us, because I think it's important that there's a connection or chemistry if you're going to trust your kids' innermost thoughts. How do you find a good therapist?
Right. So there's a few metrics for that as well. You want to make sure that if you're working with a therapist who works with teens and your child is a teenager, that they have experience working with that age group and with the issue that your child's presenting with. But to your point, that goodness of fit, you want to interview that therapist and talk about, like, boy, do I think this is going to be a match for my child? Are they open enough? Are they casual and relaxed enough? Or are they going to be too clinical and removed? And you only get one, maybe two shots at this before your child eventually says, Mom, Dad, you don't know what you're doing. I'm not going to do this. So you want to be really, right. So you're really thoughtful about like who this person is. So it's no small thing.
Yeah.
You're going to stick around. We'll
Happily.
chat a little bit more. We're going to kind of break some things down. We'll break down the things that kids tell a therapist about their parents that might surprise you. That'll be next.
And we also want to give you this website. It's parentsbetternow.com. I subscribe. All you have to do is give your name and email address, and you can get access to a free video series. So go to that website to learn more. We're back now with Dr. John Duffy, clinical psychologist and best-selling author. We want to talk about what kids tell him behind closed doors. And I think it's fascinating, especially what they say about their parents. What's something as parents that we could learn from you that our kids are saying to you that maybe they don't say to us?
Kids argue very frequently that they feel disengaged from their parents, and specifically they would argue their parents have disengaged from them to some extent. So as they get older, they find that their parents are coming from a place of fear or judgment or anger or something like that. And it's different than kind of the fun parent that they used to be, or the listening or connecting or playful parent that they used to be. And kids are really distressed about that. So what they say is, I'd like that connection back. They hardly ever say it to their parents, but they will say it to a therapist.
But for a parent, how do you bridge that? Because, there's all the sayings that you're not supposed to be their friend, you're supposed to be their parent.
Yep.
So what is the bridge or the connection that you should be trying to do that still makes sense with that theory?
Well, my goal is often to put me out of business in a family.
Yeah.
So I encourage parents to set a hard reset with their kids and let them know, hey, I'm going to start doing this differently. I get that we're not connecting the way we used to, so expect me, even if it's a little bit awkward, to come to you and to try to approach you and connect with you, and we're gonna start over again. And oftentimes kids will respond really, really well to that. Slowly, because they don't trust it right away.
Yeah.
But I always encourage parents, like, be tenacious about it. Let your kids know you're going to connect with them. You're going to hang in there until you feel like you're seeing on something close to the same page.
Is this as much, sorry, with mothers as with fathers, or is there a bigger disconnect with either parent?
There's on the whole a bigger disconnect with fathers. There's no doubt about it, and that has a lot to do with the nature of parenting these days. When I speak to groups of parents, 95% are moms. When somebody brings a child into therapy with me, almost always moms. And kids often talk about how dad's distant, he's remote, he used to coach teams, and now he's like
working too much.
Yeah, working too much, the arbiter of my grades, but that's it. That we only talk about negative things, so we dads have to be way more involved in a more playful, honest parenting way, and take a page from moms a lot of the time.
Interesting. I think that's fascinating. With judgment, I'm not sure what you're referring to by parenting with the spirit of judgment, but I feel like I judge myself as a parent, and often all I can see are my mistakes.
Yes, yeah, this is something I encourage parents never to do. I've yet to come across a parent where I thought, you're phoning it in, you're really not doing a very good job, you're really not trying. So I think most of us are doing our best, and it's tricky to parent kids today. They live in a different world than the one we grew up with, so judging ourselves doesn't really net us anything. It doesn't get us anywhere, and if we're kind to ourselves, we tend to parent far better than we do when we're judging ourselves. Way better.
I think so many people would look at you and be like, yeah, I would send my kids to him. I would love to have him a part of our family unit making things better, but I can't find somebody like him. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Where we kind of talked a little bit about certain therapists that may be more clinical, or maybe just talk therapy, just, whatever it may be. What are the questions that you ask a therapist up front before, because you said you've got this small little window where they're willing to be open.
Yes.
And people don't want to be open over and over and over with new people all the time. So up front, what do you ask? What do you say to a therapist to make sure it's right?
There's a whole bunch of clinical questions you can ask, but really you want to know, how are you going to talk to my kid? What, what's the nature of those first few sessions? What do you talk about? Because what you want to hear is a little counterintuitive. You want to hear, oh, I'm going to talk about their interests. I'm going to find what their strengths are, and that's what I'm going to seek out. I'm not looking for problems. I mean, I'll help them solve whatever difficulties they're having in terms of anxiety or depression or social issues, but mostly what I want to help them do is uncover their strengths and their greatness. You want to hear things like this from the therapist, and you want to hear that they have some idea of what it's like to be a teenager or a young adult today, some clue, or that they're curious about it, because that connection, if it's lacking, the therapy is just going to be ineffective, period.
What I love on your video series, The Better Parent Now, you have a specific video about identifying hidden strengths in your child. And they might not be your strengths, they might not be their friends' strengths, but I think that's huge, the message you have there. Also want to ask, as it relates to therapy, can you connect with a child you don't like?
Yes, and here's the trick to that, is once you hear a child's story, any child, pick the most annoying kid walking in the door, that kid is going to have a story within 10 minutes that makes you realize, oh, that's why you act that way. You know what I mean? And so you come to like that child very, very quickly and understand why they present that way. Kids aren't unlikable for no reason. Typically, there is a reason. And once you understand that, there aren't many kids. I don't think there's a kid out there that you wouldn't like if you got to really understand their story.
And quickly, can you fire a therapist? Is it okay for a parent to say to you or a kid, hey, it's not working, we don't have the right chemistry, or I don't think you're helping?
It's imperative. I think it's imperative to give a therapist a lot of feedback and maybe give it an opportunity or two. But if as a parent you see, like, I'm not really seeing any change and I'm not hearing great things about what happens in the sessions, we therapists love feedback like that. We need it, especially early in our careers. So absolutely give the therapist feedback, and if you need to, for the sake of your child, fire the therapist. Absolutely.
And we're out of time, way over time, but just in a number, how many sessions before you should see some change?
I'm going to say 8 to 10. If you don't see within a couple of months, you should be seeing change.
That's a great parameter. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, guys.
You have a great website.
Dr. Duffy.
ParentBetterNow.com. You can find out more about Dr. Duffy and view his free video series. It has a lot of tips and tools for parents. Always great to see you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.